message from the Chairman, Board of Trustees, Security Watch Africa Initiatives.
Those of you who have come to attend the conference, I welcome you once again to the Gambia. And make sure that this conference becomes useful to us in our various countries, in Africa as a whole, and even beyond Africa. Because as I speak to you, the whole world in which we live is in a crisis. Today, Africa cannot go around with a cup in hand begging people to come and save us because they are struggling to save themselves. And that's why we Africans must come together. Our leaders must use whatever opportunity they have for the benefit of their people, so that the suffering, the hunger, the poverty ravaging our continent will be minimized.
Let's welcome Mr. Buba Sanya. He's the former DG, Ghana Immigration Department, to bring us words of greeting from the smiling coasts.
Gambia is a country that you can find many things. And I'll urge all of you to have time to go around and see so many things for yourself. Though it's a small country, but very fruitful.
The global spread of violent non-state actors, including terrorists and insurgent networks, presents an existential threat to the security of our nations. The mode of operations of this network, be it individually or collectively, has become increasingly destructive to the stability, yearnings, and aspirations of citizens of our nations. The contemporary global security landscape is therefore characterized by an exponential rise in asymmetric threats with unprecedented variations and proportions. According to the Global Terrorism Index, over 180,000 terrorist-related incidents, which include more than 88,000 bombings, about 19,000 assassinations, and approximately 11,000 kidnappings, among others, occurred between 1970 and 2019. These dastardly acts were perpetrated by more than 2,000 terrorist organizations and about 700 splitter groups, thereby undermining our continental peace and stability. The scale of these threats has made it imperative for nations to collaborate both globally and regionally in a bid to eliminate these vast terrorist and insurgent networks.
Africa loses up to 15% of GDP growth a year due to the destructive forces of climate change, which includes extreme and erratic weather threatening human life, food, water scarcity, and the very foundations of economic development. And living off the land is increasingly untenable for 250 million people on the continent. Africa needs $2.4 trillion over the next 10 years to finance climate mitigation and adaptation. Although climate insecurity is not seen as a direct cause of violence or extremism, it is considered to be a risk multiplier for violent extremism.
When migration is not properly managed, its ramifications can have a great deal of negative impact on many aspects of socio-economic development of any country, but also most importantly on national security. For example, migration vices such as irregular migration, smuggling of migrants, otherwise known as SOM, trafficking of persons, that's TIP, and other forms of transnational organized crime have the potential to jeopardize national security if adequate and efficient preventive measures are not put in place and fully utilized.
Military and security agencies' involvement in resolving counter-terrorism and insurgency is just 25% of the solution. The remaining 75% is non-military. There's nowhere in the world where the military goes into battle and kill every adversary or kill every enemy That's point number one. Point number two, the war of attrition of a country fighting against another country is receiving less emphasis now. What we are facing almost, particularly in Africa, is brothers, sisters fighting against themselves. Why? Mostly because of how we administer ourselves.
Africa's importance in global security here will never be overstressed, which is also why I like a summit like this. African countries will represent about 16% of the world's population, and I think we are growing, if not even very soon, because a lot of countries in Europe, they don't allow for population growth any longer. So we hold the second largest number of seats in United Nations Security Council. Check, Africa has the largest, most unified bloc in the United Nations General Assembly. So the world cannot afford to ignore Africa. We need to actually fix few things right. And we can never tackle the level of insecurity and security challenges that we have if we don't look at this governance in the direction in which I'm looking at and in which perspective I'm also talking about.
The growing concern of cyber security in the maritime domain due to growing attacks on ships, networks, communication and navigation systems create a new dimension of threats to maritime activities, and indeed Nigeria is not an exception. Consequently, the Nigerian Navy evolved new strategies in the conduct of its operations, which position the service to mitigate maritime threats, particularly piracy within the nation's maritime domain and the Gulf of Guinea. Nigeria's maritime interests goes beyond our exclusive economic zone as a result of geostrategic imperatives which have shaped our foreign and defense policy objectives, covering the entire maritime area of the Gulf of Guinea, extending from Dakar in Senegal to Luanda in Angola.
Activities undermining the rule of law which are not being focused on, such as illegal dumping, ship-to-ship transfers, causing oil spills, need to be considered as the subject of renewed attention by academics, the criminal justice system and its enforcement agencies, including the legislature. To build on regional and continental codes, states need to ensure that they have a national integrated maritime strategy. Once again, not all states have a national integrated maritime strategy. South Africa does not at this stage and are working on compiling a strategy.
One of the key issues that the terrorists feast on is misinformation, propaganda. They demoralize the forces, they demoralize the citizens, they instill fear in them, and unfortunately, some media houses across Africa, they fall victim or they fall simple prey to the Boko Haram as well as other insurgent groups' antics of demoralizing and instilling fear in the populace. If that is cut off, I'm sure, and I assure you, the troops as well as the people will have less fear on the terrorists.
We've said so much about kinetic and non-kinetic approach, which I've heard. But there's something we've not added. We've not added what is called spiritual security. Let me open up today. Every one of us here either go to a mosque or a church. Is it not so, sir? And each time the pastors or the imam stays on the pulpit and speak without no experience of what is going on. Today, from the first day to the second day, I decided to sit here. I refuse to leave this place so that I can be loaded. So when I go back, God will not use me to transform. Because whatever you say today, if the mindset of people are not changed, nothing will change in Africa. It is about the mindset and what you enforce in the life of people that matters so much. We can speak all the grammar, say all the things. But is these people you are talking about changing? No. Teach them all the kinetics. Teach them all the non-kinetics. Some of us don't even understand what they do. I'm part of religious body. How many religious persons are here? If there is nothing, it's only me. So when I speak, sometimes when I pray for police and army, they accuse me. They say I'm collecting money. I say, which money? I don't even see the money. So now, if I'm speaking 50%, I'm going to add 120%. What I'm going to say, you guys will hear it. I am loaded now.
Pastor Okocha, you've spoken well. Well, I thought, when I introduced then, as you are Mr. Spiritual Warfare Seminar, you followed the interesting. You saw the interesting comment response, from this. But we stood our ground, and it really played out very well for us. We still keep that spirit. We know we don't do anything. Everything succeeds, by the grace of God. And the spiritual warfare was also, done in order to really checkmate the psychological effect, of the propaganda and the negative, information being churned out that Boko Haram is invisible and so on and so forth. And you see, related to what you say, if they are attacking any community or any military post, they will be shouting Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar. This is the spiritual aspect. But we also counter it also. So you too also, you can counter it. It's the same. You can say Allahu Akbar, or you can say praise the Lord. So these are the things. I think Operation Turata Bango, brought out the spiritual aspect, and the troops were able to charge through the the Timbuktu Triangle. So we know the spiritual aspect is very important, and everybody believes in it.
Security Watch Africa initiative was established to monitor and broadcast issues associated with African safety, peace, and security, and inform the public on such matters, and to further encourage professionalism, intellectualism, and excellence among African military and security forces. It holds annual conference and award ceremony. The conferences and award ceremonies are rotated among various parts of the world with a view to showcasing the African military and security forces and enhance friendship and experience among the participants.